are we going to start with AppLovin or my vasectomy? Where are we going to begin today? What do you think the people really want first?
Vasectomy talk versus AppLovin, because we have to game the YouTube algorithm.
The question is really, which is the better business insight? And I if you hang around long enough, no pun intended, it's going to be that good. So we're live.
Are we?
Okay.
Good.
Three. Are you going to?
You don't have 3, 2, 1 it. We can just start talking. This is just like Joe Rogan style.
So let's start with AppLovin.
Okay.
I think the people really just got to know.
Not about your vasectomy, but about AppLovin.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, look, we haven't talked about this at all. But it is, here, I'll tee it up this way.
Okay.
In our entire time in e-commerce, 10 years together, you've got a little longer map than I do. But you and I have worked together pretty closely for 10 years.
Yep.
The thing that is the frustration of everybody is that you can only acquire customers on Meta, basically. The other thing is that's because there's nothing else to acquire customers with.
Yep.
That works. You've put out a bunch of content saying in so many words that this is the case.
Yep.
AppLovin is showing meaningful scale on a click basis that there is a new channel that actually has real volume. And I am extremely fascinated by that. I think it is probably real and also has extraordinary implications for our space. That's my initial read on it, having never run an ad on AppLovin.
So I think it's important that one, if you're listening and you don't know what it is, fine, no big deal. But let's just quickly, AppLovin is an ad tech platform that allows you to buy ad inventory within mobile games. Now,
is it all games?
I believe so. Maybe broader mobile apps. Don't quote me on that, but I know the primary is mobile games. The interesting dynamic is that they control both the sell side inventory and the demand side buying platform, right? Which is unique in media, because if you think about, like, normally Google has inventory across a broad range of people's websites that they don't necessarily control the development of the inventory, but these people are the buy and sell side of the marketplace. So that is part of why people believe that maybe they're able to get better optimization signal and price the correct inventory.
This is the fundamental problem, which is that, like, the reason why your ROAS is bad on other platforms is because nobody seems to be able to match those things up right. Like, to sort of actually get you to target the right user at the right time, way that you can on Meta. And AppLovin seems to have solved that.
Well, I think what's interesting about mobile games is that there's so much, people I think don't have any idea how much transaction volume flows through mobile games. Like, so in terms of which users spend money in apps and are clicking on their apps to buy things, like, there's probably a really rich history that correlates really tightly with buying things on the internet. I think that's the working theory in my head right now, is that there is a unique user behavior about buying things within mobile apps that correlates very tightly to buying things on the internet. That would be the theory that I think would make it so that what is functionally people just taking their Meta ads and putting them into this new ad ecosystem for it to suddenly work. I think what's skeptical to me is this idea that those users aren't also on Meta and Instagram and other places.
Right, that it's actually additive,
right,
and incremental.
That's right. So there's this data point that actually they're touting that also leads to my skepticism. So additionally, before we get into my skepticism, let's just give some context. I have a customer right now that's spending $100,000 a day
on AppLovin,
right?
And it's going great.
Yes. And that when they say it's going great, what they're using is a triangulation, favorite e-commerce media buyer term here, that is both the platform reported view from within AppLovin, which uses 7-day click optimization by default, and also is like target ROAS, cost control bidding as like the default ideal structure, which is I think really interesting. But the people are using first click inside of tools like Northbeam, Triple Whale, GA, whatever, and comparing it to Meta, and they're using last click and comparing it to Meta. So customers all the way up to $200,000 a day. Our own brand, Bamboo Earth, Dave is spending $1,000 a day right now
on AppLovin.
On AppLovin.
That's a really fascinating thing too, because if you think of mobile game, you think of like Dude.
Right. Yeah.
But
probably a huge audience, right?
Of course, there's like lots of women playing all kinds of games that, as a dude, I'm not thinking about.
That's right. And $1,000 a day, and his measure right now, what he's saying is it comps to last click GA Meta. And so for him, he's like, all right, that's enough of an indication that I feel good about it. He's not trying to scale it to the moon.
So do you know what his AMER and total new customer revenue is?
Mm-hmm.
Like, has it improved total new customer revenue at the same AMER that he would be targeting elsewhere?
That's a good question.
Because that would be the way I would check this, right? It's just like, are you actually generating more revenue?
Well, you'd have to look at the daily platform reported revenue from Meta to understand how those things flow in sync with one another relative to your AMER, right?
Yeah. I mean, I would just look at total spend day over day. If it added $1,000 to spend, let's say you're trying to acquire customers with 2-to-1, which is probably higher than Davis, but like, right? Did it actually add $2,000?
That's right.
In new customer.
And so what you're getting at, right, is everyone's favorite secondary term, which is incrementality. So the good news is, right now we have a group of customers, 5 of them, with House, who, and we're doing we just started a geo holdout set with them.
With AppLovin.
Yeah.
Great.
Now they don't offer zip code based targeting. It's all state level. So that's okay. We're going to get state level geo holdout data. I saw Cody post one. There's a bunch of those coming. We're going to have answers very soon. This data point though, I want to discuss is, and tell me what you think about this. So AppLovin just told, I'm reading from a message here. It says, AppLovin just told me in our data, we're seeing 98.8% of the purchases are done within 20 hours.
So specifically the AppLovin purchases. So it's like super, super, super immediate.
So, okay.
What's the point of 7-day click at that
Well,
point?
so what baffles my mind, okay, is if you are telling me that out there in the world, there is this monumental pool of people that all are ready to buy within 20 hours at like massive scale to all consumer brands, and to purchase within 20 hours of seeing the same ad that they may or may not be seeing anywhere else, I'm just gonna be honest, it makes me suspicious. That actually like is a weird signal to me that these users and where they are in this purchase funnel process is that's too fast. And I'm someone who believes in like that I think that timeline is overstated in this idea that there's these really long tails of attribution or kind of noisy nonsense. But the idea that 100% of purchases, basically 98.8%, would happen within 20 hours for like t-shirts, like what are we like, or makeup for Amber Worth, or for bedding, or for whatever the ad category is, like,
is it? Let's play the game of how that could be true for a second. Okay. Let's say those are true incremental. But first of all, these are on a click.
yes,
Okay. So that's interesting. Because the person, I mean, I always think the click is an interesting thing because the person had to take an action. Like this is the
physically move their body.
This is the fundamental argument in favor of, a case you've made, which is like people, sort of
action equals incrementality,
and right, and the nonsense idea that top of funnel is necessarily more incremental than bottom of funnel, right? You have this contention that like retargeting is incremental, like so people like
it can be, yes,
as long as it's click based.
Yeah, and so I agree. Like everything about it. This is an old sort of classic adage here. When it all sounds too good to be true, something feels off. The idea that there's an instantly available $100,000 a day of customers that are waiting to purchase within 24 hours, that using the same ads that you were running on a different platform.
But if you suddenly add $100,000 a day to spend, how come that customer can't just go look? Did we generate that much more new customer revenue?
Yeah.
It's because if you're at that kind of scale, you have a bunch of stuff running.
It's very convoluted, right? Yeah, it becomes very complicated. Now you can sort of, but you're really trying to sort it out.
But people are talking about the scale so for that customer, $100,000 a day. I have no idea what you're talking about. Okay, so for that customer, is that their second biggest ad channel then? Does that immediately move into number 2?
In some days it's one.
So then you should be able to see it. You should be able to see in the new customer revenue there. That's a massive effect. You should be able to see, did it actually generate meaningfully more new customer revenue?
Yeah, I think the thing that would convolute it would be if there was a lot of overlap still for that same user in a bunch of other places. And this is the part that when I think about incrementality is that, again, if we're talking about mobile game users, I'm guessing the overlap between mobile game users and Instagram users or Meta users is very high. So are those people all...
The overlap between everybody in Instagram is really high, right?
So is that...
But does that mean every other ad channel doesn't work at all? Like, because they are also on Meta,
Yeah, I don't know. Another sort of wild data point, and this is for those of you that stick around to watch me and Andrew sort of ramble here, you get little sneaks of things that will exist everywhere under paywalls. Is in this month's D2C index report, No Commerce is now saying that they have seen AppLovin go from, not AppLovin, excuse me. Discovery came from an ad within a mobile game. It has gone from 0.16% of purchases in May to almost 4% of purchases so far this month. Okay,
so suddenly all this money.
So quick math, like 20 to 30x increase in 4 months. So when we think about the scale of what it would take to get to like 3.7% of all purchases across e-com, like we're talking about a massive influx of purchases being influenced by this.
So yeah, there's so many layers here, and this is why I think it's an interesting topic. One of the things I actually want to do this thing though, like basically steel man the AppLovin case, right? And so like, is there a world where this thing that's happening here is that something about the user's mindset in a mobile game?
Yeah.
It's just
it has to be something to do with the mobile gamer, who they are.
And also just like, I mean, haven't you ever gotten sucked into playing
Clash of Clans? I was a big Clash of Clans.
Okay, so I was never Clash of Clans. What was the
Candy Crush?
Candy Crush. That was because I was gonna say I would have that thing where I like go to sleep and as I'm laying down, like Candy Crush things are going through my head. I had to quit.
It's just
I crushed too much candy.
It is. It's very like, I think it is this state where one, you're disruptible. Like ads are already a part of the mobile gaming experience. They're annoying. You're constantly being upsold anyways.
Yeah.
These all sorts of things all the time. You spend people spend a lot of money in these environments. So look, I don't think I've ever seen anything. I like to use this phrase. I probably overstate, but like in 10 years, I don't know what has made this big of this much noise this fast.
Because I was comparing it to TikTok Shops, which is the closest thing I can think of to this recently, where people are like tweeting pretty big numbers,
millions to
yeah. And I think TikTok Shops is a good example of something where it's both real and not. It's real in the sense that there are brands making meaningful impacts in their businesses on TikTok Shops, and it's also less than you think, because the brands that are doing that are really noisy in public spaces because it's so out of this world. And there seems to me to be a Pareto principle thing there, where it's like a lot of brands basically have no traction at all, and then a few of them really crush. That's right. But that's so different than this. This is just like everybody I see on AppLovin is just like mega smashing.
Yeah.
And because like here's always been, if I step back a little bit from this, here's always been, just for the sake of this. So if you have like something about the mobile gamer mindset, and even the sort of like the almost like hypnotic place that like mobile gaming puts you in, mentally. Yeah. The combination of that with like the click-based attribution makes me go like, I don't know. And they also just beat earnings in a big way. Like at some point,
so people are spending money. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
They use cost controls in 7-day click, and they have this very unique customer base. And by like the strictest, most conservative measures, people are seeing impact. And so we're going to see a bunch of these holdout studies come back. It's going to get very public. And my fear, like one of the things that I feel this pressure for is it's November 12th, and it feels like 2024 Black Friday, Cyber Monday could be defined by, did you spend money on AppLovin or not?
Yeah.
And you don't want to be the group of people responsible for not letting your customers do that, or failing to bring that to your customers, right? So we're trying to get it answered.
My clients are too small mostly. They have like, it's a managed kind of service deal right now. They
won't prioritize you. You have to.
Yeah, I got one who's going to start soon, and we're going to see how it goes. And I'll be able to. I mean, that's a really simple media mix for that client. I'm not going to need a holdout study. I'm going to be able to tell if we add 50% more spend and it creates a bunch more revenue. It's going to show up really fast.
And so that's exciting. So I think it's absolutely worth checking out if you haven't. Try and harass somebody to get you in there.
But let's zoom out even further on this for a second. Okay. This like conversion optimized Facebook ads for 10 years, like you said, has been so dominant. Like the thing that has made me think about is just like, is this, let's say it's real. Mm-hmm. Okay. Is this going to be the thing? In the back of my head for a long time, I've had a theory about e-commerce, which is that like, Facebook's not going to be the only thing forever. Yeah. At some point, somebody's going to do their thing, and that's going to make this, there's going to be another meaningful channel, and some of that will cannibalize Facebook.
Yep.
For sure.
Yep.
But some of it will not. And what that will do is make e-commerce a better and better world to be in. It will move more retail share online because of the way that Facebook has been a crucial driver of moving a large amount of retail share online. Yeah. And that's reinforcing back and forth, right? There's multiple layers to that. But I mean, you just can't tell me that like part of the like Facebook ads effectiveness is part of the reason why a lot of things get bought on the internet.
So yeah, I think so. Someone was posting the other day on Twitter about how like, oh, I'm buying Shopify stuff. That's the downstream effect of the AppLovin.
Yep,
like
that's right. That's right.
If
what I'm saying is true, then that's right.
Right. And so there's this sort of down, exactly, same thing with any e-com brand that would benefit from the success of that. I think there is something to be said for that. The other theory I think is worth stating that I saw, there's probably Sean, I think they was stating this, is that like, maybe this is like short-term arbitrage on people like getting excited by seeing a new ad type in their mobile game of like, oh, it's not an ad for another mobile game. It's an ad for a brand I know.
Yeah, Sean was pointing out that like those customers are used to the absolute spammiest of all ads, and now they're getting like pretty good quality Facebook ads.
Yeah. So maybe, so I think there's obviously the scale question. Like the thing about Meta that's made it so special is that it's continued to find ways to build and grow the inventory at such a scale that like they have, literally we're talking about billions of users. That's like such a huge, now mobile app games probably, I don't know what the TAM is on that. It's got to be close. But the way that they were able to, when they ran into CPMs on Facebook, that became limiting.
Stories and then
Instagram and
exactly. And Reels, and
they kept unlocking new inventory that kept
Facebook first buying Instagram and then
they kept they were able to keep the ads at a price where people could still monetize them profitably. And I think that's been ultimately the magic of it all, that is yet to be seen, but there's probably a long way to go between here and there that people would make a bunch of money. So certainly exciting. And you're going to see a lot more information continue to come on about it. Would you, so like you said, you're going to buy the stock.
I'm thinking about it.
Yeah.
And the reason why, and I know like I'm too late, I know like whatever, but it just seems to me to be one of those things where it's like if it's real, I just know how much money will go there. Yeah. I know how much money is already going there. I just know what it means for the ecosystem that I live in every day. Yep. And so I don't really, I mean, right now it's trading at like an 86 PE ratio or something like that. It's like, so it's already really hot, but it's like, I just think, I just think it's a big deal.
There's this, have you seen these headlines
about doom spending?
Yeah.
I mean, no. So, this is the most bad news bias news article I've ever seen. Americans are feeling anxious, so they're doom spending. Yeah. I mean, that is just like, it's possibly true, and also it's very bad news bias news.
Yeah. So it's about this. So this is there's a CNBC and a CNN article that's like you said, the presidential election is prompting some Americans to doom spend. And so it says that 27% of polled shoppers say they're doom spending, that is spending cash despite concerns.
Oh, really? Is that what their survey data says from those customers who are telling people what their spending habits are? So it's not actually reading any GM. It's not actually reading any.
Okay. So that's an interesting theory. What about?
But okay, here's my counter to that. I can counter the doom spending thing. Okay. The 3 days after the election, all of my accounts ran very slow.
Yeah. Well, that's because you're a bad media buyer, but
it's small. But that might be. I mean, that could be true. That could be true. No, my assumption is because the only thing anybody talked about for 3 days after the election was the election, and it was just like.
I don't know that there's anything to this, but it's just interesting. Yeah. You have because then there's the whole like Bitcoin's exploding, stock market's taking off. Like, is there anything to any of that that's contributing to just general euphoria?
Right.
I don't know, but I'll take it any way we can get it. I'll take it.
Well, yeah, I know. Yeah, I mean, the other thing is like, if AppLovin is real, right? There's just this thing where like multiple channels also do reinforce each other, right? Because now like Facebook can retarget off of AppLovin and presumably vice versa. I don't know how AppLovin retargeting works, but like, and so having another channel really helps because it gets people into your ecosystem and into your awareness, into your funnel, so to speak, and all that. So like, it could grow spend over there too. So I think it's a really fascinating thing. I think it's a wait and see, but yeah.
Cool. What next?
Okay. There's just not going to be an answer to this question because it's going to depend too much on business to business, but sure. You talk a lot about how brands should just bank their profit more often.
Mm-hmm.
They should make their money. They should put it in their pocket, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Take the cash. You also talk a lot about how brands should be profitable on first purchase, etc. And one of the things I really wonder about is if that is too narrow of a worldview about the value of ads in the long term of a business. Compare your perspective, and I'll let you say how you would frame this, but this is like my quick summary of it. Very perspective to what I've heard Sean say from Ridge, Sean Frank, say, where it's like, I'm trying to spend as many ad dollars as possible on Ridge. Now, he actively says he wants to grow $1 billion business. And so, his mentality about that is, I've heard him say this too, that like essentially intent starts with awareness. And so you have to make people aware of you before they'll buy anything. And as much as we would like everybody to buy something right away, many people will not. They need to become aware of the product first and all things. And so there's this long tail of value that gets created in those kinds of ways. But that's a very different view of things than take more profit now, basically. And so I've just been thinking about this almost just sort of strategically, theoretically. How hot should a brand run their business, especially if you add another layer here? And by how hot, I mean, like, how aggressively should you spend on ad dollars, particularly past the point where you're like, I mean, obviously you should get profitable first in most cases, right? So baseline thing, probably you should be doing that. I don't know if there's some pathway to maximizing your EV while being not profitable, then sure. But that's not really the case in our space, mostly. Yeah. So how should brands think about this question of like how aggressively, essentially think about the long tail value of building a brand and sort of all of the other things that come with all the clicks and all those things you get, especially when you add another layer, which is that like if you're in California and you have an LLC and it's passed through entity, at the end of the year, those people are going to be paying 50 cents on every dollar they make to the government. So like they're actually not going to pocket all their profits. It's just, that's not a real thing.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know. I just was curious. It's just been like kicking around my mind a little bit more.
Yeah, so I think a lot about like when you and I used to debate about Jack Rubin's business and whether they should be first order profitable or not.
Mm-hmm. And they definitely shouldn't be.
Yeah, they definitely should be. But
no.
The answer here is.
Did you see what he's spending a month on Facebook right now?
No, $1 million.
$2 million. Just in the UK.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I bet his cohorts are degrading like crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know that, Jack.
Yeah.
Awesome. You're probably good.
Yeah.
But it starts with, I have a motivating desire to see more shareholders get liquid.
Yeah.
Okay. I think this is a crisis of our industry.
Yeah.
Is that nobody makes money actually. This is the big secret, is that the amount of people that are gotten rich is less than should have gotten rich relative to the size of revenue that was created in their business.
Yeah.
And so I think that through that lens, the strategy becomes very different than Sean wanting to build $1 billion business. I think that's a very different idea that I think should be the one chosen least often because it's the least likely to happen. And so through that lens, I think it's like, that is the game that is almost certain to fail for everybody who plays it. Logically, then I would say don't play that game. And I actually think there's a lot of ways to get the business. So when you talk about how hot you run, really, I think the question that you're poking at is like, how far out do you push the value capture of the customer that you've acquired?
Yeah.
And there's a trade-off usually between the amount of customers that you get in that process, and how far out you push that payback period.
Yeah.
What I've seen is that there's a bunch of things that happen that are unconsidered risk in the future of that value capture that nobody actually accounts for. So when everyone does their LTV to CAC analysis, nobody risk adjusts the future money. That is terrible financial modeling. Like there's no amount of money that you would put into any investment that you wouldn't apply some risk assessment against. But LTV, nobody risk adjusts. And there's an infinity of reasons why you should risk adjust.
I don't know if I think that's true.
Okay.
But they don't risk adjust it in math terms, for sure.
Okay.
Nobody goes and like says, okay, 100% LTV, but like we should put a delta on that for risk. They don't do that. They don't do a calculation.
Okay.
But what they all do is find a million ways to doubt that the LTV will come through.
No, they don't.
Okay, well,
they all just assume it comes through. I think that's my point. Is I think they actually.
Maybe I'm dealing with different clients than you or something. Because all I'm thinking about is the conversations where it's like people are like, I don't know, that doesn't sound like real money, and I'm staring in the face and saying like, you are making an argument sometimes to say no to like, let's just say a 70% return on invested capital annualized.
But I don't. This is my point. Here, Roik, what did you say to me about in the beginning about money getting out of the business? What's it subject to?
Taxes.
Okay, so a ROIC calculation is actually net of taxes.
Yeah.
You know what nobody does in a calculation for their ad investment? They don't actually apply any tax. So that's another example of a way in which when you actually, if you really want to do ROIC, if you want to actually create a return on the invested capital, it has to be net of taxes.
Okay, but like, so here's the thing though. Like, let's take that calculation and then compare it to the other things you would do with the money.
Right.
Don't you think that often the annualized return is still going to be much higher, even if you have to push the capture of that money out further than in your own business? Like whenever Mike Beckham talked about this Simple Modern, he said the reason that we've kept investing money and not taking money out of the business until very recently, I think just in the last year or so, they started to take money out of the business. He said it was because for forever they kept looking at it and saying the return on invested capital in this business by putting more money into the business was higher than all of our alternative uses of that money, and so we just kept putting it into the business.
I bet they're wrong. I bet if they had bought Bitcoin, it would have been better.
Yeah, I mean,
I think what people do is that they just assume that that's true because the business is doing well. But I don't actually think that they're really actually comparing it to the other options that they had at the time. Because I bet if you go back to the moment that he made that decision, he's wrong.
Yeah.
Now, does that mean that you can perfectly predict the alternative asset class to buy?
Right.
But the point is that there's risk in your decision in both places. And I
do you
just
think
that,
do you think buying Bitcoin, let's call it 3 years ago, was more or less risky than buying more Simple Modern water bottles to sell on the internet? I mean, this is a fair question.
Yeah, but I mean, I think the only
at the time,
I don't know what the CAGR is on both.
Right.
They're probably both awesome.
Right.
In a 3-year window, I bet Simple Modern's probably increased in value more than Bitcoin because Bitcoin's probably up three times in 3 years.
Right.
But if you go 10 years, it's probably not close.
Yeah.
One went from $0 to $1 trillion. So like that's not Simple Modern's growth story.
Right. Yeah.
So, but I think I don't even care. What I care is that they do start to do some risk adjustment and some actual consideration of the investment return, including net of taxes.
Yeah.
If you're going to make that argument,
yeah,
I think it's an argument people like. It's an argument I've made. There's a video on the internet of me making that argument,
which is making what argument
that you should invest on ads because it's a great return on invested capital in most cases.
Yeah.
But what I've found is that there's infinity reasons why the future gets degraded. One is the idea that your margin profile is consistent with today's purchase and tomorrow's purchase is not true. There's all sorts of reasons. One of the topics that we're going to talk about today is tariffs. So how do you, and can be a spillover into this topic, when you think about a risk profile, if there's a chance that there's a 60% tariff on all product out of Southeast Asia. Let's just say the most extreme case of potential policy. What does that do to your margin profile on that purchase 9 months out on your LTV curve?
Yeah.
Like, well, you can assume maybe I'm going to pass the purchase price all the way on to the customer and they're going to take it. Well, is your coworker going to perform the same? Like the dynamics of the future revenue are harder than people realize because the margin changes more in e-commerce than people realize. Like pull up any P&L for any business with a fairly large product mix and look at their cost of goods by month, and you'll see dramatic swings for all sorts of reasons. And that's not factored into the expectation of the future value. You take your margin today and you apply it against every future.
What do you mean by
purchase.
a dramatic swing? Like how many points of margin?
8.
Yeah.
Like, and if you think about, like, if you're talking about break even in 6 months.
Do you think that's usually driven by discounting?
It's driven by discounting. It's driven by issues related to the product. It's choosing to send something by air versus ship it. Like, all sorts of problem on it that changes.
Yeah. There's also the other possibility.
Yep, that it gets better.
Yeah, right. That you hammer away at your margins. And I have a client right now who has added 17, and it's a very early stage business, very different, right? Added 17 points of landed margin to their business, probably about 17. We'll know more in a week. In like 3 months. It's like, just by, again, earlier stage business. And so those kinds of swings are definitely different. But it's like so there's that. And so now all
that
of
just makes their investment thesis wrong too, right? Like in the sense that in that case, that they underinvested, and all of that.
But that's my point. Is that sometimes you also miss on that side, and maybe an owned audience and a customer list is actually the most valuable thing you have in some ways. Like, because the other thing is you can launch it, and I mean this also goes against the thing that we've talked about a million times. Like, what should Caleb have done earlier? They should have, spend more on ads. Like all of the kind of sort of thing. Like,
but we are for sure profitable by a lot. Like, so we say that because
I should say something. I'm assuming in all of these that the business is profitable. Whether or not even the first customer is profitable is separate. Like, I'm assuming that the business is in this scenario, it's like basically I probably didn't ask the question very well. How much profit should you take versus reinvest into the business? And obviously you're not gonna be able to give me 5% or whatever, you can't give me an answer like that. But like at some point you actually are profitable. Mm-hmm. And you have this decision, which is like, how do you deploy the capital best? And one option is take money out of the business and buy fun stuff. Another option is take it out and put it into other investment, vehicles. Another one is put it back into your business. And I'm just like thinking through how you should make that decision.
You put it back into your business less.
It's so funny, dude.
That's the answer. Is that put it in your pocket more? Is the answer. And
so why don't people do that?
Well, I think smart ones do. And this is the thing I've learned behind the scenes too, is that some of our favorite entrepreneurs in the world, at least in this industry, they've done like even dramatic things, which I think the dramatic version, like the next series I'm doing next year, like Bridges 2.0 is going to be all about like liquidity. It's going to be the 5 forms of liquidity and different ways to get it. And one of the big ones is like a debt recapitalization. So it's actually taking on baked debt to pay yourself out of the business and using the EBITDA as a mechanism to secure financing to put cash in your pocket today.
But then the risk goes on the business.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So that is actually like a transference of the money. That's exactly what I think you should do, which is to put all of the liability
onto
the business and all of the security into your pocket.
Yeah.
And oftentimes we do the opposite. Like people will be taking on personal liability in the form of either financing things that they're personally liable for or mortgaging their home to do whatever, and then putting all the money back into the business. But I want you to answer, like, I know you run a business.
I do.
And you take all the profits out every month and put them in your pocket.
Not all of them.
Besides the labor, I'm talking about the net income of the business.
I mean, I've built up a savings account in the business.
For what?
Just to make sure nothing goes crazy. What happens if somebody fires me?
They'll take money out of your savings account and put it back into the business.
Yeah, I guess that was just as well. It is 100% owned by me. It's pass-through entity. Might as well be the same thing.
Well, except for the fact that do you just keep it in a checking account earning nothing?
No, I keep it in a high yield savings account.
Okay.
And so, but it is in my mind functioning the same thing as personal savings.
Okay.
But it's just like make sure nothing goes crazy, kind of thing. I have employees now. I gotta, whatever.
Okay.
It's not crazy now. But yeah, I mean, what I'll say about this is that I'm actively thinking about whether or not I want to reinvest that capital into AJF growth to grow that business more. Wow. And I am, in fact, doing that in some ways. Like I've added additional post-production help on my content.
You don't need to do that, though. You have next month's profits to use. Like you don't need to use your savings to grow.
Not savings. I'm not taking money out of savings for that.
I mean, not like your personal savings, but even the balance sheet. Like next month, you will make a profit.
Yeah.
And if you hired another person, you'd still make a profit.
Yeah.
So what do you need growth capital for in a human service business?
Well, it's not like maybe all I mean is like I'm not always taking money out of the business and buying stuff for my house. I'm sometimes taking money and more aggressively spending it on ways to expand revenue generating opportunities in my business. I'm trying to turn it into more money via my business. That's what I'm saying. Right. It's not, I mean, I don't know if you'd call growth capital quite like that, but like,
but I just think like you are basically functionally investing off of the profits of the business.
You know what you're doing right now? You're making it sound like I disagree with you about something, but I don't necessarily disagree with you. This is an open-ended question.
You do disagree because your behavior tells me so. Just like the survey data is nonsense.
I'm not saying.
I mean, you do agree with me, but you're trying to disagree.
I'm not trying to necessarily disagree with you. I'm just trying to keep the question around like how should business owners think about. Again, like if you just think about this question of like, where is the best return on my money and what should I do with it? Because there's another layer of this that also something I want to talk about in this episode. Maybe we'll do it now. which is like this question of like, what is the money for when you take it out of your business?
To get rich.
Okay, so this is like part of the thing that's hard for me about this. Like, what if I don't care about that?
But yeah, I think you should.
Why?
Because I think that your
Do you want
life,
to go here? Right? Should we do this?
your life could be better.
Okay, could it really?
Yeah.
How? In what ways would it be better if I was richer?
You could have 2 fridges full of your favorite drinks all the time.
Okay, so this is a good one. So okay, so let's pause right there.
I have a garage fridge and it made my life better.
Okay, I have thought specifically about this thing as a thing. How much does the garage fridge cost?
$400.
How much does the drinks go in there?
I try and have pre-made protein shakes in there.
Yeah,
which are expensive.
You buy the Faris ones from Costco?
Yeah.
Not that expensive.
They're like $3.
Maybe if inflation hit.
I don't know.
The Fairlife ones are like less than $2 each. They're the greatest deal on the planet.
Then you
have, taste great.
and then we have, I love Coke Zero, so I have an endless supply of Coke Zero.
Yep.
We have Starbucks cold brew
okay,
coffee.
I'll just tell you right now. I have enough money for that.
I know.
I don't.
So you should do it. That's my point.
Well, I'm going to.
You have to learn.
We need to find the garage space right now. Like, but this is a conversation I've had with Britt, like my wife, going like, where should we put that drink fridge?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So now I've
have somebody regularly detail your car.
So I don't wash my own car right now. It doesn't detail it, but I get it washed. This is something we've never talked about. I've actually meant to do this.
Okay.
I think one of the greatest businesses I've ever seen. The guy who comes to my house and washes my car.
Yep.
It is genius because first of all, now he washes every car on the street.
Yep.
It's free advertising.
Yep.
And if you think about the target market for showing up to wash somebody's car.
Yep.
Like if I was a young entrepreneur, this is the business I would start. Because if you think about the target market for washing somebody's car, the people who have the expendable income to do that all live on the same street.
Yep.
Right. So like if I can afford to pay you to come to my house and wash my car.
Yep.
Very likely, so can my neighbor.
Yep.
And so like all the customers are right there. You're right where your customers are. It's genius. I love it. I think it's awesome. The guys who are doing this told me his dad started the business with one car in the city of Carson near me.
Yep.
And they have like 8 vans now. It's like, I love it. Go get it. That's a great thing. It's a really cool business. Anyway, okay. So they do that. That costs for both me and my wife's car $80. They do it once a month.
Yeah. So like these are all like,
I don't need to be rich to do that.
What's the resort that you told me to go to over by your house? Terranea. How often you go there?
Not very often.
You should go once a month. It's amazing.
Terranea, it is amazing.
It's beautiful.
It's fantastic.
And going with your wife and spending time together in that kind of setting is amazing. It's fun and it's nice to be waited on, and the food's incredible.
Yeah, I don't care about getting waited on. In fact, both Britt and I don't like to be waited on like that. We would find that fun.
What I like is that I leave the room and I come back, my bed's made.
Yeah, that is nice.
So that's what I would put next.
Yeah, actually, I barely care about that. Yeah, okay.
So you could just go down a list of, I think you should pay more for a haircut. I think you should spend more money on food. I think you should have a personal chef. You should just go down this list of like...
Personal chef I'm not interested in. Do you know why?
Why?
So this actually begins to get at some of my concerns about this. Do you have a personal chef?
No.
Okay. So
I know somebody who doesn't have eaten at his house while he has his personal chef.
Yeah. I have a almost 5-year-old, almost 3-year-old.
Yep.
And I've thought a lot about what that teaches them about life. If I have a personal chef in the house, about the kind of money it is, how that separates them from their friends, and all those things. And this is one of my concerns about getting very rich. And I think this is a good concern about getting rich.
Yeah.
People. So here's my pushback. People, I think, believe that money will make them happier than it will make them, and it will bring them more joy than it will make them.
See, I think everyone's been misled about this. I think this is an idea of the oppressor.
Okay, so what I think is that there's clearly a level at which having a certain amount of money adds meaningful joy to your life, and it's the level from where you don't have to think about money very much anymore.
Yeah.
And I would say, in that respect, and this is actually one of my other points about this, which is I already am really rich.
Yes.
Right? I'm by any reasonable standard in the world, despite that you and I both drove up in our Priuses today, right?
Yep.
Neither of us are car guys, right? So, and I have no interest in buying like luxury like that. I actually think a $100,000 car would add, and I mean this, zero joy to my life. It would add zero. Now that might just because I'm not a car guy or whatever, right? So for some people, I recognize that they kind of feel differently about cars, right? But so I think that like that level of wealth where you can go buy a drink fridge is plenty. I remember hearing somebody talk about this on a baseball player saying like, once you can walk into a Target, buy anything you want without thinking about it, you're rich enough. Actually everything beyond that is vanity.
So who was saying that? The millionaire was saying that?
It was like a coach. He was like a coach. Yeah.
So
And I do think this is a good point. But I think the reason that millionaires say this is because plenty of them are miserable.
Yeah, but I think that it's misplaced, right? Like the idea that they're miserable because of their money is wrong.
Do you think they were already miserable?
I think they're probably miserable people, or they probably have other things in their life that are making them miserable.
Yeah.
I don't think they're miserable because they're rich.
What do you think brings you joy in life?
I think that.
What do you think it brings you maximal joy in your life?
I think I've had these like 3 or 4 different moments of peak experiential joy, is the best of I understand, and they're all related to different things. I've actually tried to. This is actually connected to my religious experiences, trying to understand are these things uniquely spiritual in some way.
Yeah.
I don't think they are. They're like, so I've had a moment in sports. I've had a moment in business. I've had a moment with family. In each of these different scenarios, the contributing factors was like a deep sense of profound accomplishment relative to my effort in some way amongst a shared group of people. Like those were the common elements of peak joy. But I will say,
what does that have to do with wealth?
But I don't think that I can
And those are moments
independent though. No, but I'm not. The standard isn't peak joy in every moment of my life.
No, of course not.
The answer is more quality of life. All the time. But raise the baseline. I don't think that money is necessarily the pathway to the peak necessarily.
So it raises the quality.
Raises the average experience.
Is there any diminishing return on that? If you
But
what do you think right now, from where you sit right now? You've talked to some very rich people. Do you think if you had $2 billion, do you think that it would make you? Do you think it would raise your experience? If you had a yacht, do you think it would raise your experience?
I think that the things that it opens up for you. Let's just use this Dodgers game that I went to recently.
Yes.
I went to Game 1 of the World Series.
Yeah, I was hoping to get to this.
So that is purely because I have an okay amount of money to be able to afford expensive tickets for me and my 2 kids. And it created, now I get it. This is not purely a function of the fact that there's a lot of luck involved in this. But my access to that opportunity was expressly related to my financial well-being.
100%.
So I think that there are all sorts of things that I took my family to Costa Rica.
Okay, hold on. Let's do the baseball game. Okay. Well, we can do the family Costa Rica. Do you think your experience of that Dodger game would have been anywhere close to the level of joy that you had if you had done it alone? If you had gone alone?
Completely by myself?
Yeah. Actually, yeah. So what do you think made that? So this is Freddie Freeman Grand Slam game. You were there with your 2 boys. How old are they?
10.
10. Did they like baseball?
Yes.
Do they like the Dodgers? Do they like Freddie Freeman and all those things? Okay. So what you actually invested in, I would say, was the relationship with your boys. The whole goal.
Certainly part of it. Certainly part of it.
You think that's part of it?
I mean, yes, I've been to plenty of baseball games with my boys. That didn't.
But what's the point of going to a baseball game with your boys? It's your boys, right?
Yeah, we were going to the World Series to watch the Dodgers. Which, if I had gone with you, I would have had an amazing time too.
We would have had a lot of fun. But what do you think it would have been? Do you think it would have? I mean, would you have paid that money for it? To go with me? Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
In the right context in our relationship, I could imagine us doing that. That would have been a big fight with my wife.
Because she would have wanted to go with you.
No, she would have just been like, "You're spending that much money."
Oh, really? So she wouldn't have thought that was worthwhile.
Yeah. That actually casts her in a negative light. I actually don't think it would have been a big fight with her, but I'll say this because I have paid for World Series before with friends. It was a really fun time. 2017 World Series, Dodgers against the Astros. I bet net of inflation, we paid a little less than you paid for the tickets. But like, she was like, no. So she wouldn't have. We wouldn't have affected. But she would. She just doesn't understand. She just would have like, you spend that much money on that. But what I'm saying is, I think the relationship with your boys. We were texting about that. The relationship with your boys is actually where I'm going to call it 90% of the joy of that moment came from.
Ooh, I think I could have taken them to anything, and I wouldn't have had.
And your relationship to baseball, which is important.
And to Freddie Freeman, and to all of it. There was a lot of story in that moment. The Yankees, there was a lot tied up in. It was a culmination of a lot of things that were really special. And that's and so.
Yeah.
But I took my kids to go
Costa Rica.
Well, my family to stay on the sports thing though. We went to a Lakers Warriors game to
You're
watch.
still rotating in your chair so much. People are going to get so mad at you. Sorry. Okay, Lakers Warriors, Steph Curry.
Steph and LeBron play each other in the
great.
playoffs.
Yeah.
And I was like, that sounds awesome. I don't know how long they're going to be around. I want to watch both of them play. I've never seen Steph Curry play in person. It wasn't as good as the Dodgers game, but it was amazing and fun. And like, I feel very lucky to get to do that.
Do you think if you went to 40 of those games a year, it would still feel that way?
No, like definitely not.
So this is part of the
40
thing,
games that special all the time.
Yeah, but I mean, I think this is part of the thing too, is that like, this is another thing that happens when people have really, really nice stuff is they get used to it.
Yeah.
And then it actually works against those moments to some degree.
Right. It raises the standard of what elicits the same dopamine response, right? Like, I think that's like any problem with the escalation, but the reality is that there are things that release more and less dopamine now.
I'm not against spending on those things, and I think actually in particular, I think what you did, taking was the Dodger game, is an especially good use of your money if you want to exchange your money for joy. If that's the goal of having the money, is actually the money has no intrinsic value on its own. What it does to you is it provides something in your life. I think you made a great decision to do that because of exactly what you set it up for, which is the possibility of a lifelong memory with boys, and you have a life goal of being best friends with your boys when they're adults, right?
There's just so many things though. Like
they're gonna remember that game for forever.
I know. Yeah, I'm saying it's not just joy though. Like,
I mean that in a very all-encompassing way.
I'm saying in terms of the benefit of money though. Like my wife the other day, God bless her, drove through a automated car wash with a bike rack on the back of our car. Okay, and as the thing came up, the hooks in the back of it literally bent the frame of our car. The metal was bent and it broke the car wash. Okay. And at the end of it, it was embarrassing and annoying, but we're okay.
Yeah, right. I agree with this.
If that had been, 5 years ago, that would have been like very stressful, and would have been months of replanning and figuring out and cutting something. And which would have made her feel more anxiety about having done it. And like, I would have probably responded negatively. I don't know, like who knows, and that's very real, I think, for anybody who
100%.
So I don't know. There's just so much that I think.
But even now, you haven't had a crazy exit.
No.
So you don't need, you already have enough money for that.
But I agree.
You make a lot of money.
But what I'm discovering is that there's all these new levels of things.
Yeah. And I'll be curious I'll be curious to hear you reflect on this. Here's my broader pushback. I think a lot of people are trying to get really rich and don't really know why.
Well, that's different.
And but it probably is. Okay. But here's the thing I've observed in our space.
Yep.
The thing I've observed is that in the app, so this is one thing I really like about you in your life, is that you have these 3 goals that you're trying to pursue.
Yep.
And you have total clarity to them. And I think they're really good goals, right? It's die, stay married to your wife,
best friends with
your adult children.
Yep. And be most economic by 40.
Okay, right. So I think the third one is going to have a lot less value for you than the first 2. That's what I think. But
one of them will be dead, so I don't know. It's hard.
yeah. But I think having a lifelong marriage and having a great relationship with your kids,
I think those are
I think achievements. Right. And I think they will deliver to you a kind of satisfaction that literally, if you are post-economic by the time you're 40, and I mean this, if you are borderline destitute, but you have those first 2, you will have won.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
But my time allocation says different.
But either way, okay, so let's just take that for a second. Right. What I actually think is that because you have clarity of those first 2, I hope you make all the money, man. I hope, I do, because I think I know you're really driven by those goals. You care about the principles and whatever. Like, it goes great. That's fine with me, and I'm definitely not against spending money on a nice experience or anything like that. I don't think you should always, eat it like Taco Bell or something. It's just that I think that a lot of people do this. And here's, I think, the reason why it's so seductive partly is that in the absence of clear goals, the money number going up is a very clear measure of something. Yeah. And just like every Shopify store operator who has ever had their highest revenue day ever, what happens? Right. You are very excited for about 3 minutes. Yeah. And then you immediately think about how to beat it. And I think that hamster wheel is there. And so I think a lot of people, I think, are chasing that. And then what they will discover, and it's because they don't have enough clarity to the kinds of things that you have more clarity to. That's the broader observation. And so this is why I don't really care if people take money out of business, because I actually think it's like the wrong goal. Like essentially, like so, you know.
You think you just labor is the goal?
No, I think you should frame the goal of your business within a broader set of goals that are going to that you think are actually going to maximize your joy in life. And again, I mean joy in a very broad sense of the word.
Do you think you're good at predicting that?
I think my desires in any given time are fundamentally unreliable guides to that. Mm-hmm. I think anybody who has ever eaten too many cookies knows what that feels like, you know? But I think that wisdom taken broadly is when there's a better alignment between my prediction of when that will happen, my alignment of my life to those things, and it actually happening. Mm-hmm. And I think there are, I think today I see that more clearly than I did 5 years ago. Okay. I think I'm better at predicting that now than I did 5 years ago, and I think I'm way better than 10 years ago.
Yeah, that's probably true. You really get better out of the time. Yeah. I think it's a hard thing to do.
Very hard.
To predict what will make you happy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that part of the goal thing to me is that I find, and I don't know if this is just my current assessment of why this is because it's the structure that my life I was kind of developed in around sports in particular as being really formative to me as a young person, is that like achievement feels good to me. And progress towards a defined good thing makes me feel at the end of each day that I was useful, positive, and it can like rest well, you know? And so I think that that's part of why coming up with those things, because otherwise I can spin out like anybody else and start to grab any indicator of am I doing good or bad. I mean, it becomes really hard. Some days I'll like waffle very dramatically. And so I think having those as like anchoring tenets is helpful to sort of look back on my course and go, okay, do I need a course correct in some way?
Yeah.
Because you can get pulled in a lot of ways really fast.
I have a lot more I could say about this, but I should save it for another.
All right, let's go.
Show.
Let's go to
tariffs.
So I share an office with Skokin. Their CEO, Brian.
Wait. Yep. Sorry, before we do that, I'm going to say one last sentence about it. Okay, the last sentence is, I think that people ought to pursue, and I'll call it contentment instead of joy, with the same kind of intensity and vigor that they pursue all kinds of other things within life. People pursue health, and health, look, I mean, that's one of the things that I think is a lot harder to be joyful if you have less health, although people say otherwise.
You define contentment, because that working definition is like, I often see it get down to like the absence of desire.
I wouldn't define it that way. I mean, I don't mean it in a very technical sense. I mean, the idea of being satisfied with what you have. That doesn't mean you don't go pursue more things, but it means that if you don't get them, you'll be okay in some ways, you know. That you actually experience like joy and I mean, all I can think of is satisfaction or contentment right now. So you can put whatever definition that and you want. I think most people know basically what I'm saying. I hope they do. And what I'm saying is we pursue a lot of things really aggressively, and I think people think surprisingly little about that. Like your goals are a good indication of you've actually thought about what are the things that are going to bring you contentment or joy or satisfaction or whatever in life. And so then you actually direct your attitudes toward that. And I just don't think people actually think carefully. They don't they think around it. They hear a little bit about it, but they don't think carefully about it, you know? Yeah. And that's right. Okay. That's all.
Tariffs. So talking to BG today, and we're talking about through 2025. Although BG's CEO of Skull Candy, we share an office. He's a longtime friend. And we were sort of talking about 2025 forecasting for Skull Candy, how we're doing. And I asked them like, because there's this conference in January, Silicon Slopes, that we were supposed to be on a panel together. He can't come. I was like, where are you going to be? He said, I'm going to be in China planning. And so we started talking about China and why he was going there. And I asked him, I said, how concerned are you about tariffs? Like, what do you think happens to your business? And he said, well, I have an experience of this once in 2016 when the first initial Trump tariffs were put in place, which was like 20% on China specifically. And if that's the case, like there's no concern because everyone just picks up their tooling and IP and goes to Vietnam, they go to Bangladesh, they go wherever else, and manufacturing just moves. It's still controlled by the Chinese same people, but it'll just move its way around the tariffs basically. But knowing that that's the case, if the tariffs get more broadly applied to all of Southeast Asia, his words were, we're screwed. And that is like a massive variable that I don't think we're talking about. And so I had put out today a tweet just like, hey, how's everybody considering this? And so I think it's really interesting just to understand what is the potential implication of how we'll handle this. Now everybody's plan is to just sort of pass the cost on to the customer, but now we're talking about like massive inflation on e-com products that is like not going to be stomached well.
No, I mean, I'll tell you, it's funny because my very first thought when I heard the tariff thing was like, if I was running a business, I would just be like, oh, I just raised the price. And now I don't know if that would work or anything, but it immediately reinforced to me things economists say about tariffs, which is like they don't work very well, because I was like, oh, I get why economists have this theory on top of whatever data they have. It's like they probably just. I thought about it within 1 second of seeing your tweet. Just like, yeah.
So as a fun, if you made it this far into the episode, a guy on Twitter who's awesome, his name's Matt. He responded to my tweet saying that he had built a database of all of the product categories and what the current general tariff rate is, the rate of duty right now, that they are regularly updating and tracking. If you comment on this, that you made it this far and see this, I will send you this spreadsheet. This is literally every category of potential import and what the present duty is, what the present fee is. And you could go to yours, you could find out what would happen based on the country code and what it would be if it happened. So there are people that obviously are spending time and energy trying to think through this problem.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know how to think about the risk of our industry for something like this.
I don't know either. I don't know if I have anything else to say about that. I'm just trying to think. The only thing I can think of is that I would raise the price. It is interesting. Like if the tariff is global enough and you really push to the U.S., would it? I mean, well, I don't know. What would you do right now? Like would you do anything right now? If you're an e-commerce business, would you start looking at U.S. manufacturers just to check?
I think
because the other problem is the moment.
It depends on how elastic you think your pricing is in your market.
Yeah. And also,
what will happen if you raise your price by 20%?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, if your COGS go up 20%, you don't have to raise the price 20%.
Right.
There's, I think certain categories, like if you're in luxury, you can probably absorb it and whatever. If you're in a commodity where there's highly competitive on price, you probably can't stomach that. And it's just going to be margin destructive to you. So I don't know. I think that it depends on the category.
Wouldn't all of the other businesses in your space presumably have that same problem?
Unless they're manufacturing somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I think is, but then in the scenario you brought up, if they're manufacturing somewhere else, presumably it's more expensive.
Like Bamboo Earth. If Bamboo Earth's all U.S. made and sourced from farms in the U.S. and they don't have to pay a tariff on their ingredients, that could be a massive advantage.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was just immediately thinking, like, would I start shopping U.S. manufacturers right now?
I just can't imagine that. Is that going to be actually cheaper without the tariff? I don't know.
So there's that, first of all. And then secondly, there's going to be a massive demand side problem here, which is that like all of those manufacturers are going to all get shopped a whole bunch if the tariffs actually go into place, and now all your prices are probably just going to go up, right? Like suddenly your lead time's going to get crazy because they're going to have too much business,
So this is definitely an area where I feel out over my skis. I don't have any good advice to get you. It was just stark to me, BG saying we're screwed. Like, the level of concern he had about if that was broadly applied was just like, oh, wow. So that's like, it's got to be that top of mind for people at his level, where he's importing all of his product on long lead times from Southeast Asia. You can't, it's just like, it would be really destructive. So something to keep an eye on.
The other thing it makes me think about is like if what will actually happen is a bunch of U.S. businesses just have to lay off employees. It's like if it just has the exact opposite effect of
you just have to find the margin somewhere else, basically, or
they just go out of business, or they can't grow, or something like that, and so it just ends up creating, it's sort of a different new problem. I don't know.
Well, for sure, inevitably.
All right.
Okay. So that was our macroeconomic section.
Should we do? Let's talk about. I like your
my AI thing.
Your AI thing. Yeah, I think it's interesting.
So there's an article we'll put in the show notes that I saw on LinkedIn from a person by the name of, let me pull up my link here. Sorry, this is great podcasting.
You're doing awesome. You're doing fantastic, Terry. Don't worry about it.
So much. Alston Lin, previously of Meta, Google, Yelp, and other cool places. And he was talking about programming and AI. And the point that he makes in this article, this is going to be a quote out of the article that I read right here. He says, I encountered this barrier while working on a consulting project for a private equity firm. Our AI system outperformed human lawyers in contract analysis, achieving over 95% accuracy. Despite this impressive performance, the client hesitated to adopt the system. Why? Because if a lawyer they outsource the task to makes a mistake, it's considered par for the course. However, if an AI tool they push to adopt makes a mistake, that's a career risk. And this is an interesting theory. It's the same sort of thing with like AI creative or copywriting, is that there's a certain assumption of human error that we allow that's acceptable, that in a job like being a lawyer or in a creative might be acceptable. But the second it's an AI tool, the singular error makes it feel like the tool is broken.
Yeah.
And I've noticed a similar thing with forecasting, which is that we will walk into brands who have no model for how they currently set their financial goals. Yeah. It's literally just like writing down things that they want to happen. And we will bring them a pretty sophisticated model, and they will spend hours scrutinizing every little input of the model.
Or you miss forecast by
exactly.
X percent,
the
and
thing
they're
is
just
gone.
like,
yeah, exactly. And so what you do is you invite this level of scrutiny with these things that makes it actually hard to get their adoption, because the expectation is that it's perfect in some way. And so I've found this to be an interesting dilemma in the hurdle to getting adoption for things like forecasting and AI. Anything that's predictive in nature, I think is why people struggle with cost controls. Like it's like, if it doesn't work once, it's like this thing is broken, you know. It's just not, it's a very hard set of ideas to actually get adoption over.
Yeah, the example of this that I always think of is driverless cars, where it's like the notion of like, you know, I wouldn't sit in outlet if it makes a mistake, and it's like, that's right. Do you know what you do every day otherwise?
And how much riskier? Like,
yeah,
and it's funny. I felt this. So my wife and I went to Napa recently, and I was like, oh, we'll take a Waymo from the airport. That'll be cool. Like I've never, you know, I want to ride in one.
That's driverless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember like going to book it and being like, oh, that's kind of far. Like, do I feel safe? Like, it was a weird feeling, and it wasn't logical at all. Like I know the data, but like there was something about it that was like, if I died in a driverless car, like how dumb would that be? But it's just one of those things that there's just this insecurity or the high standard about it.
Yeah, right. The broader thing you're talking about is that the moment you raise the bar of something's output, the moment that people also hold it to a higher standard. And I mean, where I actually thought about this, and we can go delete this afterwards if you want to, is I think you and I talked about this maybe last time I was here after we pressed stop on the recording, which was when you guys at CTC made a big effort to engage and think about equity in the business, right? Diversity, equity, inclusion, that kind of stuff, right? Suddenly, a business that previously was run by a bunch of white guys or whatever, you know, became held to a standard around that and around customers and around employees' experiences that was probably much more exacting than had you actually not ever made those commitments.
That's right.
Right. Even if the same person would have come in, right? Their disappointment level is really different. And you know, to your credit, one of the things you've always said about that is like, that's right. Yeah. That's what they're supposed to do. That was the commitment I made, and they get to hold me to it, you know? But it is an interesting thing. And I think one of the things the AI article gets at, and I won't even say this with what you're saying about the DEI stuff, or with what you guys with the DEI stuff, like, is that it creates a frustrating disincentive to go do those things.
That's right.
And I think there's a real problem there, because you actually, what should have happened, and plenty of people I think in your experience did do this, which is like, like I'll even say my reaction when you did that was I wasn't sure that it was going to work, but my thought was I know you,
Right.
I know what your intentions are here,
Right.
and so I'm going to be in it with you, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. You know, and I'll go with you kind of as far as it goes. And I thought about it, etc. And I would think about like with a lot of these other tools, there has to be some way in which we say we want you to keep making incredible stuff. You know, like keep and like it's okay if something breaks. You know, like. If I'm the guy who has the driverless car and dies, and somebody uses that to fix driverless cars forever, well, then I've been a martyr for the good of science in the world. You know?
I think there's something about that disposition that you're right. And it's funny. I feel like in some ways, there's a spirit there that is one that I think people really do want, which is like the idea of being the constant cynic that criticizes everything is actually a really exhausting thing to be around.
Yeah.
So I think
like, you know, pessimism always sounds smart. Right?
Exactly. And so I don't know. And I counted this a lot inside of organizations where it's just like it's clear that someone has made a role in being really good at finding the error in the proposed solution.
Yeah.
I can find myself being guilty of this.
I was going to say, yeah, his name's Taylor Holiday.
Yeah. And I recognize this too. I have to, with every new thing, I find like my initial
like AppLovin.
Exactly. Is to like go to why it's wrong. You know, versus why it's right. And everyone wants it to be right. Yeah. So it's actually way more exciting to say that it's right, you know?
Yeah. But this is another helpful dynamic. So I've thought about this a lot with you because I've had a lot of these conversations with you. Yeah. And I now appreciate it because I know that what I know about you is, here's the thing I've had with you a lot of times. Right. Like we'll be talking about something and then we're arguing about it and I'll be like, oh gosh, he didn't hear me at all in that conversation. He didn't, you know, all he did was, I know you're listening. You're a great listener. But it'll be like he just counter argued and like it's like then I would score any points in that conversation, you know? And the answer is actually yes, because what will almost always happen is like within a day or two you'll call me and even I can't remember what happened when that, but one time you called me and like we argued about something and then like within a day or two you called me and the attitude was something like I don't even remember what it was, but it was like, okay, so how are we gonna do this thing? And I was like, what? Like, that was not hearing from you at all. Because what I know about you is how you sort your ideas, right? And that is a really good skill. But I think the thing there is that you pair that instinct and that way of processing ideas with actual like optimism about the future. You actually are an optimist.
So this is the other thing I'm trying to wrestle with is because I think I get.
And by the way, you think well of people
by the possibility of things too. So there's a weird tension there that I'm trying to figure out why sometimes. Whether it's, you know, NFTs or AI or whatever the thing is that captivates me. And then other times maybe it's source, maybe it's how I discover and how I feel about that person in some way.
I'm sure.
I don't know. But yeah, I do. I bounce between those states where I become probably overly optimistic in a way that's like not examined enough. But yeah, anyways. So well, AI is going to be hard to adopt. But that's my fear as I'm building this creative AI thing.
I think there is a good organizational takeaway here, which is like you ought to recognize this in yourself when it's happening because it does actually cut off good work. Yep. Because the danger is that you then don't take the driverless car, which will save a lot of lives. Right. And so like it actually matters that you do this. And in microcosm of that, the microcosm of that in people's businesses is that when you hire help, this happens with agencies all the time, actually, people's relationship to agencies, right, is that they go like, they expect everything to be perfect all the time. Right. And so then...
It's such a different standard than their own employees.
They not even close. Right. Their internal employees, like you've made this point, right, that internal employees, people spend way worse money on their internal employees than on agencies, and it's because you can't see their work and you're not holding them the same way. And so it's actually bad. And because the alternative framing is to view the person or the technology or something else as a partner to work with and to basically believe is smart.
That's right.
And to basically believe is good, but with some problems to solve like everything. And a good version of that partner, you know, the driverless car people are not satisfied if there's still people dying, right? Right. So they're going to keep trying to solve the problem. That's right. But it's probably a better solution today than the other one, you know? And so you have to accept both of those at the same time.
That's right. And, you know, it's funny, like I think about like AI and Meta's even attempted introducing to us features where it's like, turn this on and we're going to pair all these different things together. And all we do is like, we mock the ad where they played the rock music over the thing. Yeah. And like everybody loves to point out those examples. And it's so destructive to the idea, which is that like, you are cherry picking the worst example of a thing that's actually really powerful, which is it's actually testing an idea that you never would. It's actually how you get to the edge case is that the exact fact that you think that it's a terrible idea is actually the thing to be explored, because that's the thing that most people will not naturally move towards. But the system doesn't inherit that bias that you have, which is rock music shouldn't be on a makeup ad or whatever it might be. Right. And so by exploring all those edge cases is how it gets to the best potential return.
And it's just like what you are describing is the reason people have burned so much money on stupid media buying practices. Like countless amounts of money just vanished from their businesses. I remember seeing somebody post at one point on Twitter something that was this Meta thing where it was like Meta's now going to start optimizing this, and this for you. And of course it's just like 30 replies are just like, terrible. Can you believe they do that? And right. Me being me, I had to jump in there and be like, fantastic. I hope they do more of it. Like I'm right in that situation. That's what I'm saying. Like I know there's annoying counterexamples. I know, but you know what? You know what you do when the customer sees the wrong ad because they did something, and they email your customer service, they comment on it, you just go reach out to the customer and fix it.
Yeah.
It's going to be okay.
Exactly.
It's going to be all right.
Right.
Like,
and
they got a discount at the wrong time.
I try.
Fantastic.
And I get that
lucky day for them.
Meaning assigned to that work in some way that feels starting to. I've noticed this with like some of the people that would respond to me about the Gen AI creative stuff. Is a lot of like photographers and the people that it clearly was very personally like threatening or offensive in some way.
Yeah.
And I try to think about
that's a different thing though. I think.
You think it is?
I think somebody whose career is threatened or who doesn't feel like it's artistic is not nitpicking the 1% of things that it got wrong, right?
Well, so I think
they might do that.
I think media buyers are doing that to like undermine.
Oh
yeah. So there's this similar sort of threatening. And so I try to think about like what areas would be threatening to me. It's like if suddenly tomorrow somebody had a perfect e-commerce forecasting tool, what would I feel in that moment to try and like I came across there's one of the best pieces of software I've ever seen, and I'm so jealous of it, is this company called Runway. Now the financial modeling that they're doing and the planning is built more for SaaS businesses right now, but it's so beautiful and so good. And I remember watching it and like it took my breath away almost a little bit of like, oh shit, like this is like so many of the things I've thought about in my head but didn't know how to communicate well, and so I can imagine those experiences feeling very, I don't know, just like bad. Like they would feel bad when you discover something that might make you obsolete.
Yeah. I'm actually completely sympathetic to that.
Yeah. I can think about that. Like it's like me watching, Freddie Freeman hit. You're like, oh, I'm dead. Like it's the end of me.
Yeah. Right. Well, you've told the story about seeing a couple of guys who got drafted your same year and being like, "Oh, that's a big leaguer." I don't look like that. Exactly. That guy's 6'5".
Literally one of those guys. And so I know that. And so I try and think back to that, to just trying to think how to meet these people in these moments. Yeah. Like, okay.
I do think that's a little different though. I think the idea of the person whose job is threatened, that response is one thing, but there's another person who just nitpicks the times where he gets it wrong.
Yeah.
And that I think is actually something different, which is like, anyway, there's, if all of this stuff is going to work, it's going to work as tools, which is a thing that increases leverage. AI chatbots are downstream. I mean, let's actually use a different example of that. Like, here's a good one. This is a really extreme example, and I don't know if this is taking anybody's job, but I saw in Dan McCormick's Weekly Dose of Optimism, which is amazing. There's a company called Ulysses that is creating an underwater seagrass farming bot, because seagrass absorbs insane amounts of carbon. Like it's like way more than rainforests do or something like that. And so this bot is going to do that. RoboShark is whatever. Yeah. It's amazing. And all I'm saying is like that tool is actually just downstream from a shovel. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like it is just another leverage creation tool. And just like over time, humans create more and more leverage. And so I think like what you have to be able to do is to think about any of these tools, even with whatever shortcomings. Like for example, that RoboShark might not be able to get seagrass cultivation perfect all the time, right? But like you have to be able to, you have to put yourself in the position. And I have this with AI. We've talked about this a little bit. Like I don't really like it. I don't think it's very fun. I get almost no joy out of AI, but I'm like, I have to be able to swing the hammer.
Like, you want to go shovel the seagrass yourself all the time.
I do sometimes. Yeah. There's dignity in shoveling seagrass, And so like, but I mean, but I realize if it's a tool that creates leverage, then you got to be able to wield it, and you got to have some sense of like how to do that. Well, I mean, let's be honest, while maintaining human dignity, that's a real concern, But anyway, yeah.
Yep. Speaking of human dignity,
let's talk vasectomies.
Let's talk vasectomies.
Okay.
So
What took you so long, first of all?
So I actually, I really didn't want to do it.
Okay.
I feel like I don't know where this comes from.
You can say whatever you want about
I feel like I am now a non-useless contributor to the human species.
You are a useless?
No, I'm useless now.
Yeah.
I can no longer proliferate the species. You might as well just send me out to pasture and kill me.
That's really interesting.
I don't know where it comes from, but
should we talk about that right now?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. We should explore it.
No, I think it's interesting.
Yeah, like I don't. It's like.
Yeah.
Maybe it's like, but currently we are just these evolutionary beings. That, maybe it's all tied up in that, but I really didn't want to. I don't know.
So you weren't scared of the pain?
No. It had nothing to do with that. I just didn't want to do it. Yeah. Now,
because you haven't had a kid in a long time.
No, my youngest is 7. So, and I don't actually want another kid.
No,
it's not. But I want the option.
My youngest is about to turn 3, and I've had vasectomy for 2.5 years.
Oh, so you did?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
I mean, I got it very soon after.
Did you? Okay, so I want to tell you about my experience. You told me it was like yours. Okay, so Dr. Bednarev is kind of famous in Orange County. He's done 15,000 vasectomies.
Okay, so he's got it dialed.
So I have never experienced a better system of anything in my life. Like if I could hire him to be the COO of my agency tomorrow, I would do it. So from the time that I walked through the doors at the office till I left was 13 minutes.
That is, especially in a medical office.
It was unbelievable. Okay, 13 minutes. So one, they have an amazing app. You fill out all your information ahead of time. You book your appointment. They give you all the information. It was a really well done front end experience. All private practice, no insurance, like just cash. And so you walk in. They hand you a cup of water and 2 Tylenol. You take that, have a seat. Doctor will be with you in a second. He walks out. Walks me back through him, and he clearly has a pattern of talking to you. He immediately engages you in conversation. Okay, so you're not
because this is part of the process. The walk is part of the process.
Exactly.
So he's figured out,
and he starts just talking to me about life. And we get into the room, and in the middle of general conversation, take your pants off, put them around your knees, and sit down on the chair. And so it's like that's happening, but it's an afterthought, which that was awkward. And if I had to linger on it, it would have been more awkward.
Yeah.
I'm sitting on the chair with my pants around my ankles.
Yeah.
And he just goes to work, right? He lays me back. They rubber band your dink to your shirt. Like it's the most awkward thing, but you're just like, okay, this guy. And he's just flowing, dude. He's just talking. And then he has his whole thing is it's like a needleless, like it's this air pressure gun that does the anesthesia. So there's no needles. And like the pace of it, he finishes, wraps it up, like whatever it was, 12 minutes. And then he's like, here's what's going to happen next. Person's going to give you they're going to come in with your home testing kit. You're going to fill this out. You're going to do this thing. And then he goes in and then he stops and goes, and I'm going to ask you to leave me a review. And there's 2 reasons why. One, he goes into this whole thing about how his mission and purpose is in the United States, women get their tubes tied at about 50% of contraceptive surgeries are related to women getting their tubes tied.
50%?
That's and 50% men get in Canada, it's men get 2/3 of the time the man gets it done.
I'm amazed.
Yeah. And so he's like, my mission is it's way more invasive for women. So your review, yes, it's going to help me, but what it's going to do is there's a guy like you that's going to read it. It's going to read about this experiment that's not going to make his wife go through that. And if you do that, it would mean a lot to me. And he walks out the door. Did you do the review? I'll have to review. Yeah. Right. And because the experience was incredible. And I'm like, and then so the woman comes in, she gives me my kit. She tells me about my care facilities. The doctor will call you this evening to make sure that you're all right. I get a call that night. Hey, how are you doing? How are you feeling? Okay, this is what you can expect. No problem. If you run into any issues, let me know. Here's my number on text. His personal cell phone. The whole thing was incredible. What should have been like a scary, dramatic thing was over so fast.
Yeah.
He was so conversational. He made it feel normal to talk to me while he was, fixing my whatever tubes, And it was the best medical procedure I've ever seen. So so I got 2 friends already signed up to head over there.
You get a referral deal?
I'm ready to become an affiliate. That's my retirement plan.
Should we put an affiliate link on this?
That's what I'm going to do. If you are a man considering this, and it's like, think of like, you know how you go to Turkey to get your hair transplants? Come here to Orange County.
Drive straight to Terranea. And
he needs to clip this video as a podcast and run it as a friggin'
we should send it to him. You should send it to him. He would appreciate this.
I will. It's incredible.
He would appreciate this. I believe it. You should have your content guy clip this part. Just send it over to, hey, we did this.
Nikki, clip it. We're sending it to the doc. We want this to be on ads everywhere.
Yeah, and aside from ads, he'll just appreciate that.
He owns vasectomy.md too. Great.
Really?
Yeah. So if you need to check him out, vasectomy.md.
I don't know that mine was a lot longer than 13 minutes.
Yeah.
But it was shockingly painless and easy.
Yeah.
And the idea, I'm shocked at that 50-50 stack because I just think it was so easy.
Yeah.
It was so easy. And yeah, anyway, that's a really
So you wanted to do it? You were cool. You were like, I don't want to.
We probably would have thought about having more kids, but both of my wife's deliveries were really rough. And the second one was C-section. And so it just was like, I just don't think we want to put Britt's body through that again as much as we would maybe think it. So sometimes even still, we're just like, I'd be really fun to have more kids. But so be it. We started having kids a little later in life and all those things. So yeah. I don't think about it.
You were fine with it.
Yeah, I wasn't. Yeah, I didn't have any
reservations
otherwise about it. No, it was. I thought a little bit like, am I sure? And the doctor did say to me, like, you need to think about this as a not reversible procedure. Yeah. But I didn't have any existential reservations like you're expressing. Yeah. Okay. Speaking of just like other fun topics. Yeah. We're sitting here drinking. This is the third one of these we've done. Typically we've had alcohol. We're drinking non-alcoholic beer. We got some Athletic. First of all, I am astounded at how good Athletic Brewing is. And there's probably better ones. I've maybe had one other NA beer, maybe. But I had it and I couldn't believe how good it tasted. But here's the actual thing I want to get at with you. So like I'm not drinking tonight because I just didn't want the negative effects of alcohol, which basically affected my sleep, all those things. So that's the reason I'm not drinking tonight. I like beer. I still drink it some. I'll have a cocktail here and there. I think I had 3 cocktails with my friend the other night. Slept terribly. But had a good time, not getting hammered or anything. That's not really my style. But just kind of sitting in the backyard, having a few drinks as we're hanging out. But there is this whole, obviously, thing of like performance-oriented life around being totally sober. Like alcohol is just like all bad for you.
Yep.
We've never talked about this, I don't think. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's true. I think, bad for you physiologically. Like,
so that's definitely true. Yeah. But this idea that like you should optimize more towards total not drinking. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, I don't know if I believe that. I think drinking is a lot of fun sometimes.
Yeah, this is what I think too. But there is this subgroup who approaches it, and I think it's like the super optimizer type,
Yeah.
And that's my experience of it. Is like there's sort of a cost to optimization there that people I think don't see.
Experientially, for sure.
Yeah.
Same thing with food. I like someone healthy food.
Right.
So it tastes great.
Yeah. So I don't know. I just didn't know. What do you think? What do you think is driving people to do? I mean, there's alcoholics is a different deal, right? Like, let's put them in a separate bucket. Like, you gotta not drink if you're an alcoholic. That's fine. But like, I don't know.
It's just, never drinkers, like how?
Yeah, there's just this thing where it's like, here's the things I don't do to make sure I achieve. Like, I don't know. Maybe I just think those people are missing something. Peter Attia's comment, moderation and everything, including moderation. I'm sure that's not original to him.
No, that's a good quote.
It's really helpful, I think. Occasionally, maybe you should drink too much. I don't know. Maybe that's wrong. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, maybe. I think again, everybody has this sort of deeper like value of what they want. One of the things I've thought about with optimization is that I actually think that the variance in life expectancy is something I've thought a lot about, which is that if you could live to like 150 with these behaviors, I think they'd be way more worth pursuing. Mm-hmm. But I don't know that the difference between like 75 and 90 is actually that meaningful. This is something I've thought a lot about. Like, I think it's about trying.
Your worst years, for one thing.
What I really want is like a healthy 70s. That's like my ambition. But I don't know that I need that level of optimization to accomplish that.
Yeah.
Now, I might make a mistake and that people are going to live till 140 and be healthy in some way. Maybe Brian Johnson cracked it. But but I just haven't seen any evidence that like the upper, like the from 99% to 100%, like that work in that range, the actual reward is that high.
Yeah. And in fact, I've heard specifically with alcohol, like something to the effect of like, if you have a drink a night or something like that, it was like, it probably shaves a week off your life. It's like maybe it's less than that. Maybe it's a little less than that. It depends probably if you're a male or female and some of those things. But it's like, are you willing to trade a week for some of those things? Yep.
Yeah, I think so.
That's what we do. Yeah, that seems fine to me, you know?
Well, and again, it's kind of like LTV. Like, I don't know that I have 40 years anyways.
That's right.
Like, you could die tomorrow.
Right.
In which case, once you pass that drink, pass up on that drink. So I think it's like you're
a good case for this, too, because you're a good time when you've had some drinks.
Oh, I don't know. I think about like playing. I went to Texas to hang out with the Heart and Soil crew and the Ecom Cowboy and Aaron, and we played golf in the morning. We went to the Texas game at night and had a bunch of beers along the way. And you know what? It was a great time. Did I feel great the next day? No. But I got on a plane and wore my sweats and
you're fine.
Whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. I also had a funny thing where like a few nights ago when I was with my friend, had a few drinks. Yeah. So my whoops of my sleep was terrible.
Horrific, right?
Awful, right? I had that. But I was journaling in the morning and I thought, I'm going to pay special attention today to see, do I actually feel that much worse today? And I didn't really. Yeah. I felt mostly fine during the day. And it made me wonder if actually that metric is like a little too in my head in that respect. And that almost like, it's like an over optimization in that respect, that like when I went and worked out in the afternoon, I got a good workout in. I did all my normal stuff. I was a perfectly pleasant and present husband and father, you know.
I think the drinking could be a little bit like running a sale. You know,
sometimes it's fine.
Sometimes it's fine.
Relax. It's okay.
The next day, your customer order is going to be down a bit. No big deal. You know, don't do it every day. Don't do it every day. But occasionally, it's fine.
Yeah.
Special occasions, Black Friday, run the sale.
Yeah. Okay. Is there anything else that we are missing here? Any last thing? Do you want to talk about your big swing and a miss on Athletic Brewing Company?
Oh yeah, I was offered to invest in an athletic brewing company during COVID, and I didn't get it. I thought people drinking beer without alcohol, that's dumb. And I've invested in Ugly, the soda company that went out of business. So yeah, I'm a terrible angel investor. That was such wasted money. Last thing, do you feel good about Black Friday, everyone? You think it's going to go well?
Oh yeah, I can't believe we haven't talked about that. I don't know. I never really feel good about it before it comes, because I think the lingering nervousness for me is always like, maybe this is the year nobody shows up. Because especially with my brands, they're going to spend 4 to 5x the money this month that they normally do, you know, or whatever, or 3x, where it's like those days are so important for them. You always feel pressure, I think, about it. And one of the things I know is that I'm going to get up at 6 a.m, and start checking ads, you know, right away. And I'm not going to be useful at 6 a.m. I won't do anything that's good for the ad account at 6 a.m. Like, you won't even know anything at that point in the day, you know. This happens every year. I'm like, oh no, it's not going well. Oh, it's fine. You know, like, so I don't know. I don't like it. My instinct with almost all e-commerce stuff is, I was actually telling clients the other day, I really prefer the rhythm of like regular and consistent improvement with brands. I think it's more fun. That said, moments are fun when you hit them, when it's good. And also, that's not a good way to run an e-commerce business. You actually need to create moments. And so, like, you know, taking bigger swings is actually a better idea. So I should probably feel better. How do you feel about it?
One of the things I hate about this month in particular is that because it's like Black Friday is so late, it's like literally when I look at like a plan for a business's contribution margin by day, like how much is dependent on this last day, just means that like you will not know if you're hitting the month until that day.
I had this conversation with a client today. We're recording this on November 12th.
Yeah.
I had this conversation with a client today. I said, we're behind right now on my daily forecast. Yeah. But first of all, the percentage that we're off looks high. but the actual raw dollar amount is so low compared to what the rest of the month holds. So like even if we're missing by 40% right now, I can make up 40% on this day in like 2 hours on that day. You know, it just doesn't matter that much. And so it's just like, he was like, yeah, I don't know, but how do you think it's going? It feels like we're a little slower to start this year or whatever. Maybe it's election stuff or whatever. I was like, I think we're probably slower this year so far than we were last year. But
it's really a week behind.
Exactly. I really don't know. And
it's hard.
I don't know how the date, November 12th, compares to the date last year, even though, like, I don't know what that means. Because I was
like 5 days backwards. But
do you think that's true today? Because I know that, like, it's the same amount of days till Christmas.
It's the same amount of days till Christmas, but it's a different number of days in November until Black Friday. So if you think about like the last week of September, so it is weird though. Like I'm with you. Like I don't know how to feel. The other problem that happens is like, this is an example. So we're looking at a screen right now, and like I'm way ahead on returning customer revenue, but I don't know if that's because I did my dailies poorly.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, is that going to hold, or did I front load this wrong?
Oh.
And so like I'm all sorts of worried about like how right I got Black Friday.
Yeah.
You know, like there's so much of how I'm doing today depends on how right I am about that revenue.
This nicely touches a couple of topics that we talked about earlier. Because one of the things, I had a client my client with probably the biggest holiday swing for me was like, hey, I know we've missed forecast here and there recently, but I know I also asked you to do something impossible by doing these daily forecasts. Like, so he was like grateful that I was doing this exercise in the business. If you net it out to the year, I've done pretty well for him on the forecast.
Yep.
But some months were behind, some months in my head. My method for forecasting is way less sophisticated than your guys's. Yep. So it's like, so he was really gracious about it. So I appreciate that. So he didn't hold me to the driverless car standard, which is what I'm saying. Like, it was really nice. He saw me as a partner in it, and then at the same time, I don't remember that I touched it.
But yeah, so it's challenging. The other way to solve it is this. So this is Born Primitive.
And this is so awesome.
I put out a tweet the other day. It's like breaks my graph. Like we can write out charges. This is fun too. So Born Primitive is a brand of ours we've been with for a long time, and they had a big movement on Veterans Day where they created this campaign to pay off $5 million in medical debt, and they got their founder got invited to go on for Fox and Friends. And that Fox and Friends moment created $1 million day, and he'd be okay with me sharing this. Yeah. And it was almost exclusively new customer revenue.
Yeah,
which is really cool.
And
what that does for the business long term, and cohorts, like it's really incredible.
And on top of that, the timing of this is brilliant. Yeah. Like that you get this moment right before Black Friday. He's going to get a bunch of money from these customers who now are in love with the brand because of this. He got their attention at the exact right time. And actually, one of my takeaways from watching this campaign was more brands should be thinking about a great brand moment and even like a charity moment like this. I started thinking about this for my brands. Like, who could they give to at this time that would create a moment like this where they would feel awesome in a month where they're about to make money. They would build a bunch of people to their customers. They get to scratch off a big check to somebody, which feels great, and then it would attract a bunch of organic attention right before the moment. It made me think like this is a good playbook. Like try to create something on November 10th every year. You know,
it really is.
On Veterans Day or whatever.
For any brand that's connected to it, it's really a smart move. But needless to say,
we always talk every year about spend into Black Friday, spend in advance. You know, or instead don't spend into it.
This is the one I think merit to some of these tools, these platforms that offer you different first-party data is I really hate the change to event purchase versus click purchase.
Yes,
where you get this like really deceptive thing, which is that like if you did a bunch of spend yesterday and then turned your odds off, you'd have a bunch of ROAS today. It makes it actually really hard to go back and understand whether Black Friday itself was a big driver of efficiency versus your earlier days.
Okay, so this is a funny thing. One of my clients listened to you on the internet, and so I went back and looked, and I looked at 1 DC versus 28 DC on Black Friday last year. Yeah. We hit our 1 DC target almost exactly, even though the moment felt smaller. So Black Friday was a smaller spend than in previous months, but our 28 DC revenue was really, really good. And so it felt like plenty still, but not as big of a percentage as previous.
Okay. But still Black Friday way more than any other day.
Definitely. But it felt still a little underwhelming to the client relative to some other days.
Okay.
And so I ejected, and it was helpful to see that 1 DC versus 28 DC distinction on that day, even though I see your point. Like,
see,
yeah.
I wonder if I could pull this on a 1 day click basis, whatever. Could get it later.
Yeah. The 1 DC number, I was actually, I repatted myself on the back. Like, I almost hit the exact target of 1 DC revenue that day on a ROAS level, you know? But yeah, it's especially annoying with the thing I talk about every year, which is like spend for the 3 weeks leading into Black Friday. You know, you just can't see how those days actually generated revenue, you know, without a third-party tool.
The other thing I hate is like if you like if a campaign like when people turn off campaigns and then they go back and then look at them and they're like, oh, this was actually really good because there's been a bunch of purchases in the subsequent 7 days or whatever. And it like just causes all sorts of arguments of like, this campaign's really good. What's the problem here? You know, whatever. Or it's like, so there's a bunch about it.
I use that as a way to spot check the relationship between 1 DC or 7 DC and 20 DC, but I know you guys don't really report on 20 DC, do you?
Not as much. Everything's 7 day click ideally by default. But in this moment right now, one of the things I've been doing too is trying to have a 1 DC for almost everything right now.
Yeah.
Because so much of what you're trying to do in this moment is short-term levering.
Yeah.
Like if I need to move something today, if I'm like, I picked up some good organic demand or whatever, or AMER is really strong and I need to move the lever today. I want more 1 day click campaigns.
Yeah. I typically look at it on both. And actually I run a lot of 1 DC for some clients. I have a theory. This is while we're just spitballing media buying here. I have a theory. Okay. So I just ran a split test, meta, my standard CBO BAU setup. Okay. So it's just CBO, broad targeting, excluding the existing customers, put 1 million ads in, a bunch of different ads. It's like 5 or 6 ads per ad set. But basically it functions like a giant ASC because it's just one campaign, a bunch of ads across a bunch of ad sets, but the machine gets to optimize them completely. Okay. That versus an ASC with the exact same ads. Okay. So basically the only thing that's different is the middle layer of ad sets. Okay. And it was like a couponed quiz or couponed test from Meta. I'm going to write this up soon, actually. And the BAU campaign won. Now I think that's basically noise. Like I think ASC could have done just as well, but they were pretty close. Okay. They tended to focus on the same ads, etc. So that was the setup, but I have a theory. So that made me feel good because I felt like, okay, ASC is very annoying to build with for a bunch of reasons. And so we don't really use it very much. But what I made me think about was maybe one of the tricks for media buying cost controls in moments is running more ASC, because you would accumulate all of the learnings in basically one giant ad set. And so any expected conversion rate changes at the ad set level that would happen would all happen in one ad set instead of across a bunch of different ad sets in a BAU setup. Do you see what I'm saying?
Well, we don't really do that, though.
What do you do?
We don't ever have multiple ad sets, whether it's BAU or ASC.
Oh, you run one ad set per campaign? Yeah. Oh, that's dumb.
You're a big like trying to have infinity ad sets guy, and I just like campaigns. But
yeah, that's stupid.
It's the same thing.
It's basically the same thing. It's just a more annoying way to build that.
Except you don't have to toggle between campaigns and ad sets, which is really annoying to look at. Yeah, makes it easier to manage.
Yeah, but then you can also see all of the. I actually don't really care either. But okay, but the same thing would apply though, which is that like if you launch a sale, right? You're gonna get to Black Friday. Let's say everything performs 40% better than it did the day before. Okay. So all your cost caps are gonna underspend that day to start.
Yep.
Right.
There's a question about how long that takes.
So So this is the point of the ASC idea: is that wouldn't, at least for your sale ads.
Yep.
Right. What if you put them all in an ASC? Yep. That way you would theoretically shorten the timeline of the campaign recognizing the cost control, because all of the cost controls conversions would be on one ad set.
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm gonna test on this pre-BFCM with a client and see if this like works. If it works, what I think will happen is that the cost controls it's gonna be a sale that will work on Friday.
Yeah.
And what I should see happen if it works is that the ASC campaign will be ultra responsive to the fact that the conversion rate went,
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those sort of mysteries to me about how much the historical data informs each campaign type, and how quickly it updates, and whether like we use ECR, but I was listening to your podcast today about meta optimization, and you were talking about how many additional signals are at play.
Yeah.
And what none of us know is the weighting of all those different signals.
Yeah. Right? No, for sure. Yeah.
I definitely do feel like experientially the thing you're describing, which is the post-sale overspend.
That happens all the time.
Right. Like, yeah. So the question is like, why do we know that and the system doesn't?
Because the system, right. Because the system doesn't know you turn the sale off.
But the second it starts converting at a different rate.
Because it regresses the conversion rate.
Right. Like, but is it regressing it to a mean? It's not regressing against yesterday. Like the change. It can't
Probably.
I mean,
it is, right? Yeah. I mean, it is. It does pick it up eventually, right? It's just a matter of how fast and how slow that is.
Yeah. And like, but even like what you're supposed to set it to.
Yeah.
It still feels like you're guessing they'll know better.
Yeah, sort of. Yeah. I'm guessing the timeline for sure.
Yeah.
But I've actually kind of wondered if the best way to run some of these sales is like especially if you're running a 3-day sale, day one, you just set an auto budget and set your conversion rate a little above what it would be and just make sure that you can't blow money unnecessarily. And then the rest of the sale, you write it out. Because anyway, this is
I don't mind the short-term campaigns that you have high levels of confidence in.
Yeah.
It's like, whatever. Run it on lowest cost.
Right.
Like, it's not the end of the world.
Well, I wouldn't run on lowest cost. I would just run it with like a really high cost cap to start, like basically force them to it.
Just so you do have a control over if you want it.
Yeah, and then I can drop the cost down. Yeah. All right. There's some media buying. There's some media buying feedback. I think people like to hear that stuff.
Yeah, it's really cool. Media buying. Yeah.
There's some people who like it.
There are a lot. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. Hey, thanks. If you want to send us questions, send them to podcast@ajfgrowth.com or to
Taylor@commonthreadco.com.
Okay. And on Twitter @AndrewFaris and @TaylorHoliday, and tag us both publicly and yell at us. Please do that. Please disagree with us. We yell at each other. Did we argue that much this time?
No, I don't think much at all.
Okay, we'll have to fix that next time.
Do we?
We argued a little bit about where joy comes from in life.
All right. You probably have do you think you're a more joyful person than me? I think you probably are. Dude, what's your joy level on a scale
pretty
of 1
high.
to 10? Is it?
I think I'm pretty satisfied in life.
Well, that's a different word though. Those aren't synonyms.
They're to me.
They're synonyms. Joy and satisfaction.
They're close. They're close to me. They're fulfillment. I would put in there.
What do you like? What do you call like? What happens when you get like really happy and excited? What do you call it? But will they get like at an extreme level?
No, I would say that's like a deep. I liked your language for experience of joy, like your Freddie Freeman experience. I mean, we were talking. I was almost crying for you.
What would you call that? What do you call that?
Elation. But see, again, I would say that got ratcheted up by the experience of being with your boys, so that like the moment I was actually thinking about this after you said this. The moment tapped into 2 deeper loves for you.
Yeah,
and that's the thing that happened.
It was it was like a bunch of stories in this like thing. Yeah, it was very meaningful.
I was actually thinking about
what was the experience I was having? What would you would call it?
I would say this just an experience of joy.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would say. But I would say your capacity to get to a higher level of joy in that moment is in part because you have some deeper joy down below.
Okay.
Right. And so like, maybe your joy tank can get filled higher because of those things, of those things in your life. Yeah. So that's what I would say.
All right.
There it is. Okay, great. Thanks.